I guess we'll start up. So my name is Michael Cassara. I'm an associate professor in emergency medicine and science education over at Zucker School of Medicine in Northwell in New York. I have a lot of different hats, which is, and I've been in a lot of CME faculty development sessions, and it's sort of took a composite of all of those and then some ideas of my own and sort of pulled them together to make this sort of session for you today. So it's great to see that there's looks like there's a breadth of chronologic experience, but there's also a breadth of EM experience. That's going to be useful for a session like this because we're always trying to find our place in the world. So I just want to just briefly, I'm just going to pass the mic real quick just to introduce some of the other members of the faculty team that'll help facilitate the session, but we're going to start get rolling right away as best we can.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Furman. I'm one of I guess Dr. Cassara's simulation fellows this year, working with him.
Hi guys, I'm Mike Sparandio. I'm one of the clinical faculty at LIJ at Northwell, and I'm also one of Mike's graduates of the simulation fellowship.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Modell. I'm a simulation faculty at the Zucker School of Medicine, North Shore LIJ Health System, also a sim fellowship director.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Hawk. I'm the simulation fellowship director at Rush in Chicago.
Morning, everybody. I am the SIM director at Elmhurst in New York and also the chief wellness officer.
So I know I recognize a couple of simulationists in the crowd. It's not really a simulation. I guess it technically is a simulation, a low technology sim. But let's get into it. Let's set the premise for this session. It's really more faculty development, and I think it applies to any profession, specialty, discipline. So there's no conflicts of interest, no disclosures, and the characters, the representations that we're going to use, since we're using a case study, are not based on anybody or any real place or institution, although they're heavily influenced by some of our own insights. So let's just set the setting. You have this handout in front of you that sort of talks about this fictional plant state and then Flower City. And as we have these two different major tertiary hospitals and two other specialty hospitals within Flower City. And so there also is an underserved area to the north of the state that has 3 community hospitals. All of these hospitals together form an academic practice partnership. There's a university nearby, and that's the U, the triangle. So that's where many of the different schools of health professions and other schools within the university system are sort of housed. And the two entities, I believe it's Numbers Health and it's Colors, what's the university? Oh, I forgot already. Our university Numbers Health, and then Letters, thank you, Letters University, I forgot. They formed what's called an academic practice partnership. I'd like to represent that. That's a phrase that, I don't know if you've heard that phrase. We'll talk about that a bit, maybe at the end if there's time. But it's more than just like an affiliation, like a clinical affiliation or a site affiliation. It's coming to mean much more than that in today's day and age. So we'll explore that. I don't know if each of you belong to one of those, but our person today does. And so, you are the faculty at Flower City Medical Center. And Dr. Green is the person that we have on the second page of the handout towards the top. So Dr. Green is a PGY3 who wants your advice. She was a student at Letters University School of Medicine. Like, you happen to know her at that time, and she's been accepted into a 1-year emergency medicine ultrasound fellowship, and she's got multiple long-term goals. I'll pull up a slide in just a moment, but the goals, I think, are all listed in the vignette on the second page. The features of the academic practice partnership, this setting, are also on the first page. So it's a little lengthy, but something you could probably sort of breeze through real quick. Her question is, she's got those long-term goals on the second page. The question is, how do I get there? And so what I'd like to do is, I know we have a big group. This is not the greatest room, but I set up 3 sort of areas. And I'd love to see if you could sort of build the map. Now, I'm not going to give you any instruction on how the map is to be built, but can you sort of take a look at where she is in her space? Like if you've gone to a mall or to some sort of like large sort of, like even a convention center like this, and you have a map and it says you are here. You could sort of put a spot on one of these sort of spots and say, where is Dr. Green? And then what are all the different attachments and what are the different spheres of influence that she walks through or needs to walk through to get to where she wants to be. Now, obviously, this is going to, you can't map out like 10 years on 2 pieces of Post-it pad. You can't, that's not possible. But there are going to be some connections that she's going to need to make, and there's connections that she's already has. And I'd say for each of us, what are the connections that we already have wherever we are in our trajectory, and then what are the connections that we need to make if we don't already have them to sort of find our place in the world and get to where we want to go. So I'd like to break us up. We can do this somewhat organically, but if there's a section here that maybe can come up here, there's a section over there that can go back over there, and maybe another section over there that can go over there. And we have plenty of facilitators, but I just want to give us about 15 minutes to sort of think about how we would map this person's place in her world. We have to use her, because there's too many of us to do our own. But for yourself, I would say when you go back home, or later on tonight, reflecting over a nice cocktail, something, think about where you are in your world. And then I'll show you what it could look like if you have a little bit of time and you want to do it with a technology basis. I'll show you one that I put together. But I think my world's a little complicated. But I think your world is probably complicated too. So let's break up organically, maybe introduce one another real quick, but I'm going to sort of break out like 15 minutes or so. Don't be afraid. At each sort of hub, I have a couple of Post-it pads and I have a couple of markers. Things shouldn't bleed, but you could stick these on to maybe sort of say who are the key sort of people. And you don't have to name names, but you could name positions. And then you could sort of draw connections, and we'll sort of talk about that. The concept of sort of making the map is something we'll talk about in just a bit, all right? I hope that makes sense. If interaction makes you uncomfortable, then at least observe, but I would say go for it.